Welcome everybody, this is General Microsoft 365 Development Special Interest Course, and this is the bi-weekly link. It is May 14th, 2020. And today we're going to have a quick recap on what's happening within our open source projects. These are really widely adopted and used open source projects. So we basically then go through these bi-weekly, just updating you on the latest on what's happening. And also if you're interested on contributing on these open source projects as well. So PnP CSOM Core, PnP PowerShell, Modernization Tooling, and Yo Teams in this time, or as a bi-weekly recurrent slides. And then we have two Teams-related topics today. So Paolo is going to actually talk about latest on Teams provisioning capabilities with PnP Tenant Templates, and so talking about how you can automate tenant templates and how that also relates on the Teams templates, because there are Teams templates in the team, and what's the value of PnP Tenant Templates, because that might be slightly confusing, but it's a good topic to actually go through. Putting you on a spot there, Paolo. No worries, you still have 20 minutes to actually make that happen. And then Victor Villain is going to talk about, after Paolo, on building Microsoft Teams solutions, which are also exposed in SharePoint. And this is an interesting area where we will be actually focusing more and more in the future as well. So as you know, SharePoint adding model has been around for quite a few times. But then people do not necessarily know that you don't actually have to use the SharePoint adding model to surface, as an example, SaaS application in SharePoint. You can use exactly the same manifest package which you are using for Microsoft Teams. So we have already at this point this kind of a, how would I put it, shared experience between a SharePoint and Microsoft Teams. So you can actually build stuff in a SharePoint framework, which works in a SharePoint or in a Microsoft Teams, or you can build stuff using the Microsoft Teams solution model, so building a web application hosted in Azure, which actually can be surfaced also in Microsoft Teams or in SharePoint. So Victor is going to talk about that one, because it is an interesting capability to definitely to understand. And that really comes down on the perspective that we want this to be as easy as possible for you. You implement once, whatever is your chosen path, and you can surface that same solution in multiple locations, which I think makes a lot of sense for everybody. Hopefully you agree on that one. Quick recap on the opportunities to participate with the community. We are always open for community demos, and rather than using Microsoft demos are definitely also welcome, and we do them quite often as well. But we have such an awesome community, and so we want to give you an opportunity to come to these calls and then do a 10 to 15, 20-minute demo, depending on your topic, and then get visibility and also teach other people in the community what you learned based on your work and stuff what you've done. You can definitely contribute in GitHub. There's a lot of different projects which we're executing. You can contribute as an individual sample or getting part on any of our existing initiatives, which you can actually find from our new landing page, which I'm going to mention a few slides forward. And then the most important thing, provide feedback. That's a simple way of providing feedback. Go to the chat window right now and say the thing what you always wanted to say for Microsoft related on their experiences. If something doesn't work or something works, let us know, so we're able to address that. So super important thing. Good. Updated recap of our assets. We do have two different YouTube channels right now, which is Microsoft 365 Developer Videos. That's the so-called official channel, where we have all of the, let's say, community calls across the Microsoft 365 platform. Then we have our Microsoft 365 SharePoint Community PnP video channel, where we actually have more community-driven videos and also non-dev videos, because a lot of the videos which we cover over there is not about development as such. So there are videos like from Microsoft side related on the multilingual experiences in SharePoint on how to set it up. But there's actually also community contributed guidance for Microsoft Teams development, as an example. So both of these have a kind of a purpose and a role. We have multiple different open source assets and projects and GitHub organizations. Majority of our open source assets are nowadays in github.com/PnP. So you can explicitly distinct, or is that project executed by a Microsoft employees, or is it a open source community executed initiative? And then sample galleries, there's multiple ones of those as well. The web parts, extensions, list formatting things. We're looking into having actually a sample gallery also for Microsoft Teams samples. So you can easily find and access those samples which are available in GitHub rather than trying to find the stuff in the GitHub, which might be super confusing. Let's go to one page where you can then use a filtering mechanism to find what's relevant for you, and then you get unblocked on implementing things. And then if you're interested on having a big view on what are we doing in the PnP and Microsoft 365 patterns and practices as a initiative or as an open source project, go to the AKMS M365 PnP. And that's a good segue for this slide, which is basically the AKMS M365 URL. It is the new landing page introducing what is Microsoft 365 patterns and practices and listing all of the people, all of the initiatives, all of the community calls which we are executing under the same, let's say, under the same model. So remember that one URL which will guide you through on everywhere. And then obviously, if you're not super familiar with GitHub contributions, keep on having this one in the slides as well, because people need to have access on this one and remember this one. So we do have a really great initiative run by David Warner and Hugo Bernier, who are both MVPs related on how to get started on contributing in a GitHub. So AKMS sharing is caring is the URL. And from there, you can actually see meetings and scheduled topics where you can actually join, and then you'll learn how to contribute or consume these assets which are available, so which are intended to make your life easier. So that's really the objective, what we want to do with this. Good. Let's go to the PnP CSOM Core library, and I think, Bert, I saw you on a call, so you're going to probably talk about next 3 recaps.
Yes, I can take all the 3. Yes, sure.
Excellent.
So for our PnP CSOM Core library, we had a release, the May release on May 12th, so this week. And the things that happened over there is some support for retrieving users from Azure Active Directory. So some additional methods that use graph under the covers to make it easier for you to do that. Also some graph-related improvements around Office 365 groups. You can renew a group, you can get the nested group members. And then we have a set of usual smaller series of fixes and improvements that happened. And one thing to kind of highlight is there is some improvement around provisioning teams with app only. Now that's part of Paulo's demo in today's call, so I'm not going to disclose too much about that one. I'll leave that for Paulo.
Don't take away his thunder. Come on.
I'm not doing that. So going forward, you might have by now heard that we're working on a graph first SDK library, or whatever you want to call it, which provides you an object model where you can work against the SharePoint teams, etc. But then you don't even have to really understand whether you're using graph or REST or graph beta, graph you want, etc. So it's all kind of abstracted away in the library. Now that library, we will have a preview one at May 26th. That's the current timeline for that one, and that preview one is more meant for for folks that want to contribute, who want to play around. So it's definitely not production ready, but at that point you can try it out and give feedback and start contributing. So we're really wishing and hoping for folks to jump on that to help us further build this library. And then related in our .NET strategy, we also are still aiming at a V4 of PnP Site Core and PnP PowerShell built using .NET Standard. So we had some good evolution in .NET Standard. No date yet, but at least things are still moving internally in Microsoft. So keep your fingers crossed that we can also start working on that one pretty soon.
Quick update from the PowerShell side. Erwin couldn't make it, so you're going to do a quick update on this as well.
Yeah, so the PowerShell side, there's not really that much that happened this month, but that's fine. So there's some update to in the invoke PnP search query commandlet. Essentially, you can kind of have a different way to provide the properties for a search query to return. And there is still some ongoing refactoring to Connect PnP Online. So if you have seen some issues with Connect PnP Online, or some kind of things which work differently from compared to older releases, then that's expected. So we still have some pending work there. So if that's critical for you, stay on the March release for now. But we are looking to get this fixed fairly soon, and might even do like an intermediate release in the coming week for PnP PowerShell to fix that.
Yeah, I have to say it's pretty cool to see the growth on the lowest graphic. It basically shows the growth within the last 12 months on the amount of tenants, the blue bar, the blue line is the amount of tenants which are using PnP PowerShell. So it was 11,000 a year ago. Now it's 18,000 tenants in a month, and it's
Can you go back to slides?
Absolutely. I think it looks even. Yeah.
So we went from 19,000 tenants to 34,000 tenants. We kind of almost double usage on a yearly basis, more or less, roughly. So that's really insane growth. Yeah. Last one, modernization. For page transformation, the last release, it contains some fixes for Enterprise Wiki. So if folks were transforming Enterprise Wiki pages from on-prem, so meeting SharePoint 2016 and lower, then there was an issue with that, and that has been fixed, which is good. And there is some fix around image caption handling. So if the caption was provided by an anchor link, it kind of didn't take it over to the modern image web art when we created the modern page, and so that's fixed now as well. Looking forward for the future, the item has been there for like a couple of weeks now. We didn't work on that yet, but still the plan is to kind of support other input sources for page transformations, essentially being able to say like, define a format which allows you to export your classic, your non-Microsoft intranet or a media wiki environment or whatever type environment to a common format, and that common format can be used to generate modern pages in SharePoint Online. So that's the aim, but still has to start. So there's still some work to do. Then the last component in the modernization story is the scanner. Upcoming 2.11 release shifted from mid-May to end May. Reason is because we were waiting for like a fix in the Can Modernize homepage API, which is done and being rolling out right now. So once that's fully rolled out, the plan is to release 2.11, which will provide improved reliability when you use sites read all as a permission, so when you use low permissions, and which has an additional check on the homepage modernization feature, which we're rolling out as well. So the reports will tell you like, yeah, your homepage will be modernized, yes or no, via a server call, which is the Can Modernize homepage API call. And that's about it.
Excellent. And then let's go to the UO teams. And Victor is on a call to give him an update on this one.
So we actually, an hour ago, I pushed a new update, a new preview for the 2.14, which contains some interesting stuff. First of all, it's schema version 1.6, which supports the loading indicators and some new permission settings. Also added some of the planned updates to the build pipeline for newly created projects, so it's better handling of environmental files if you have multiple environments such as prod, stage, etc. want to deploy different kind of packages. We are also, it actually contains some breaking changes in some of the dependencies due to that we want to get rid of these dependencies over time. Otherwise, it's continued growth on the number of apps being scaffolded, etc. So close to 3,000 over the last 90 days, more than doubled over that same time. We're still planning on releasing 2.14 as soon as possible. There are some issues that I know of that need to fix, but hopefully within a week or two. We're also planning version 3, and there's a lot of good issues for you to start with if you want to help out, both when it comes to documentation, but also features. And we'll talk more about what you can use Yo Teams for in just a second when we do the demos.
Thank you, Victor, on that one. I have to say, by the way, I was testing Yo Teams for one of the demos, which I'm recording later today, and this is so cool. The nrock integration and everything inside of it makes it so easy to actually do on local debugging development and then just push out updates on the teams or for SharePoint side as well. So, which is really, really cool. So
good. Thanks.
Excellent stuff. Let's actually move into the demo section, and we're going to start not with Victor, but we'll start with Paolo. And Bert already kind of destroyed his thunder, right, Paolo?
Exactly. My demo is already done, so yeah. Next one, Victor, please.
Oh, you are so disappointed. So I'm not going to do
no, just
demo.
kidding. Come on.
I love you, Paolo.
We love each other. everybody knows. Okay. So let's move to my screen and let's start talking about the provisioning with the PnP provisioning engine, provisioning of Teams related stuff.
Today, and I can confirm, by the way, that I can see the screen. I would suggest to go one step even bigger on the font. Sorry, Paula.
Okay.
At least for the the senior people, our eyes are getting. We've been watching the screen.
I am, by the way, so all good.
Excellent. So take it away.
Thank you. Let's talk about provisioning and specifically about provisioning Teams-related content. First of all, as a brief introduction, I want to let all of you know that since a few months ago, we introduced, I think almost already a year ago, we introduced the capability to provision not only templates for a specific target set collection, like we did in the past, but we also allow through the provisioning engine of PnP to provision what we call tenant templates. And a tenant template is a template which includes not only the asset and the template for one specific set collection, but a hierarchy or a sequence, as we call it, a sequence of set collections, plus eventually many more objects and resources in the whole Microsoft 365 ecosystem. In fact, for example, with the latest release of the provisioning schema, which is the one of February 2020, we provide the capability to provision sequences of set collections, as I was telling you. And for example, in a sequence, you can create a hierarchy of sites and set collections with different set collection types. You can create communication sites. You can create team sites with no groups as sub-webs of a site collection that you are creating. You can provision team sites with or without a backing team in Microsoft Teams. And as such, you can easily create in one shot a site collection and a Microsoft team backing that site collection, as well as you can eventually create a site collection with a root site of type team site no group. So a modern team site, but without the backing Microsoft 365 group. Moreover, aside from the sequence, we have some other sections like the team section, which we will dig into in this demo, the Azure Active Directory section through which you can create users in Active Directory, so that if your template is a template to create a demo environment, you can easily also create the user that you want to use for the demo, for example. The drive section through which you can work against OneDrive for Business, and you can upload content in OneDrive for Business for specific target users. And so there is quite a lot of stuff that you can use to provision content, not only at site collection level, but at tenant level. And that's why we started talking about tenant level templates and not only site collection level templates. And that's also why we have, from a PowerShell point of view, a new commandlet that you can use to do the provisioning of a tenant level template. So let me switch to Visual Studio Code and let me show you some sample templates that I created and the corresponding PowerShell script that you can use to do the actual provisioning of those tenant level templates. Let's start with the very first demo. We will see three different solutions. This one is a provisioning tenant level template through which I do the provisioning of a team in Microsoft Teams. As you can see, I have the provisioning root element, and I have a couple of input arguments just to define the title and the alias of my team when I will create it. Moreover, in the Teams section of my template, I define one team. So you can see I have a bunch of properties to declare what is the display name, the description, what will be the visibility of my team, whether it will be a public or a private team. If I want to archive an already existing team, I can use the archived equal true attributes to the team, and I can define the nickname of the team that will be created. And actually here I'm using the input parameter for the alias that I get when I execute my provisioning. Then inside the team element, I can configure all of the settings that usually we can configure using the UI of Microsoft Teams. But right now we want to do an automated provisioning of a team. So I can configure the fan settings, which are my favorites, the guest settings, the member settings, and the messaging settings, with all of the options that we have in the UI. And if you're wondering what we do under the cover, here we use Microsoft Graph under the cover in the provisioning engine, and that's why you can eventually recognize a kind of a mapping between the properties that you have in the Microsoft Graph online documentation and what we have in this schema. Moreover, you can have a security section, which is commented out in this sample, because right now this example, this template will be provisioned using an interactive user, so a delegated access token. And as such, I will automatically use the current user as the default owner of the provisioned team. I can provision channels. And as you can see here, for every single channel, I can configure the tabs, the team tabs that I want in the channel. Interesting part of the story, you can create new tabs, but you can also remove eventually out of the box tabs. So just to make an example, sorry about that, but most of the people don't like the wiki tab, which is always there by default in every single channel. So you can easily say, okay, in my general channel, get the wiki tab and just remove it. So we create the team based on the out of the box template, but instantly we remove the wiki, and for example, we add another tab that I like more, for example, which is the OneNote Teams tab. We can write messages in the channel, so that when we provision the channel, we can also provide a welcome message or whatever else you like. And we can, of course, create multiple channels, which can eventually be not only public channels, but also private channels. So, for example, this one is marked with private equal true, and as such, it will be created as a private channel. But I can still configure custom tabs in that channel. And here, I'm configuring a web tab, which will go to bing.com just for the sake of making an example. And again, I remove the wiki one. Nothing against the wiki, but I simply don't like it, so, but don't get me wrong, okay? So that's my first sample. Let's try to apply this one onto a target tenant. So how can we do that when it is a matter of applying a tenant template instead of a site collection template? Well, we always need to connect using the Connect PnP Online and the target URL of the SharePoint Online environment. So even if right now in my template, I'm provisioning just Teams-related stuff, from a PnP PowerShell perspective, nowadays we still connect to the target SharePoint Online environment. I provide in my example the credentials through the Credential Manager, and once I will be connected under the cover of the Connect PnP Online, which I'm going to execute right now, we will also acquire an access token, a delegated access token for the user represented by the credentials that I have in the Credential Manager. And I will get an access token to consume the Microsoft Graph with a default set of permission scopes, which will include the permission scope that we need, clearly that we need to do the Teams provisioning. As such, if I execute the apply PnP tenant template, as you see, which is the commandlet I was talking about before, the apply PnP tenant template will apply a tenant level template to my target environment. I provide the path of my file, which is the one we just saw, and a couple of parameters for the team title and the team alias. So let's do that. And before executing this one, because I know that nobody trusts me, let me go to my teams.microsoft.com site in the tenant that I'm targeting. And as you can see here, I have overall 6 teams, but I don't have any team called PnP Team Demo SIG 01A, because I am a developer and I need to provide a complex name to objects because I cannot make it simple, you know. So let me execute this commandlet, and let me switch back to Microsoft Teams, and you will see pretty soon that the new provision team will pop up. Here it is, with the general channel right now, and pretty soon with the private channel as well. So far it's quite interesting, because you can, on behalf of a specific user, provision a team using the PnP provisioning engine. let me go back and do some monitoring of what is happening. It is still working on it. It takes a while because we have some delays in the process to avoid getting throttling from one perspective. And from another point of view, we also need to wait for some of the resources to be fully ready before being able to use them. So now the provisioning is completed. I can come here, and as you can see, I have the general channel, I have the private channel. In the general channel, I don't have anymore the wiki, but I have a OneNote which has to be configured. We are working on making it possible to provide a predefined configuration for the OneNote, but it is not yet there. And I have the private channel where I have the tab, the web tab with Bing. So it was quite easy to do this kind of provisioning. Problem is that often we want to do that not on behalf of a specific user, but we want to do that, for example, with an app-only solution, with an app-only token running, for example, in an Azure function. So another option that we have in PnP is to use this way of working. So we can use the quite new initialized PnP PowerShell authentication commandlet that Erwin showed you a couple of weeks ago, I think. I can create on the fly an application, or better, register on the fly an application in Azure Active Directory, which I can use all lifelong once it is registered. And by registering an application and providing a name for my application, some settings for an X509 certificate that will be used to have the actual app-only authentication in Azure Active Directory and against SharePoint Online, I can then connect to my target environment, providing still the URL of SharePoint Online, so as before, but instead of using the credentials of a specific user, I will provide the client ID and the thumbprint of a certificate registered for app-only authentication for this app in this target tenant. And by doing that, and let me actually execute this code because it will take a while so that we can save some time. Let me configure the initial variables. And of course, this is a trivial password just for the sake of showing you something really simple. I have my commandlet, which will create in Azure Active Directory a new application. I will be prompted with the request for a set of credentials to authenticate against Azure Active Directory. Let me authenticate. And this step, of course, has to be done once in order to register the application. You don't need to do it every single time. And now we are waiting 60 seconds for the app to be ready, because in the meantime, on the Azure Active Directory side of the story, if I go here under app registration, if I'm fast enough, I can search for the application that we just registered. Here it is. We can already see that we have a client ID. If we go under the authentication section, certificate and secrets, we can see that we already have a certificate which has just been created. And under API permissions, we can see that we have some predefined permission scopes assigned to the app, but we are still waiting for the grant from an admin. And that's what we are waiting for in Visual Studio Code right here. And after 60 seconds, we will be prompted to grant those permissions to the app. Once we are done with the granting of the permissions, we can connect and we can apply PnP Tenant Template using, again, the .xml file and providing, and here it is, the prompt for the grant. So let me select this user and let me grant those permissions to the application. And once I've done that, I can easily get the information about the client ID, as you can see, and the thumbprint of the certificates, which are those we just saw in Azure Active Directory. And I can connect to the target environment using those credentials. Right now, we can apply the template, but before applying the template, I want to show you what's inside the template. This is quite similar to the previous one, but now we're running in an app-only context. So first of all, in the team section, we need to have the security section, because we need to have at least one owner. So we have, in an app-only model, we have to provide at least one owner in the security element of the template. Moreover, we can't use the API, the Graph API, to create messages in the target channels, because that one is not supported in app-only. So we can't provide any welcome message or any other kind of stuff in the structure of the provisioned template. Aside from that, we can do whatever we like, and we need to keep into account that whenever we create a private channel, like here, for example, by default, the PnP provisioning engine will assign the owners of the team as members, as default members of the private channel. Because again, in order to create a private channel in an app-only context, we need to explicitly select at least one member for that private channel, and we decided to use the owners of the team. Hope you like the choice we made. So if I go back, I can now execute the apply PnP tenant template. Hit F8, and the provisioning will start. If I go back to my team, here we'll see, and we see that the new one popped up. We can also see, this is quite nice, that we get a notification from a bot that the team provisioning app added our account to the team, which is quite nice because we know that we have been added to a team by an app-only running solution, which is, I think, quite smart. So it will take a while again, and we will get our provisioned team with all of the settings that I showed you in the XML provisioning template. Okay, here we are. So let me show you. We have the general channel again with the OneNote, and we have the private channel again with the Bing web tab. So hopefully so far so good. I don't know if there are any questions in the chat because I'm looking at my screen right now and not on at the chat one, but in case of any urgent question, Vesa, just let me know and I can try to give an answer. Otherwise, I will keep on.
Pending questions have been pretty much answered already. There was a question related on, can you do unattended execution in Azure using this one? Answer is yes. Yes, that's precisely what this is for. So
exactly. But now the really interesting part, not saying that the previous one was not interesting, but the even more interesting part of the story is that using the latest capabilities that we introduced in the PnP provisioning engine, you can also provision site collection in SharePoint Online and Teams all together with a unique provisioning template, and you can eventually provision a site collection and a team, which will be connected one to the other. And leveraging the PnP provisioning engine, you can define the artifacts both in SharePoint Online and in the team within a unique provisioning template. So let me show you how you can do that, because I think it is really, really powerful. So let's start from the provisioning template, and let's close the session just to let you know it is usually not a good habit to mix different kind of connections with app-only and without app-only. So my suggestion is, if you're working in a demo environment like I'm doing right now, to eventually create a new PowerShell session or to clean the already created PowerShell session to avoid having conflicts between the cache of the connect PnP online commandlet in memory. In a common scenario, usually you don't have both of the authentication models within the same context and within the same session. You can be app-only, you can be delegated. So, but right now I'm playing multiple demos within the same context, so I need to create a new instance of PowerShell. Now, let me show you the last template. In this template, I have still some input parameters, the team title and alias, but I also have a company name, which I will use later on. And I have a set of provisioning templates, a sequence, and a team section. In the sequence, we create a site collection of type modern team site. So it will be a modern team site with a backing Office 365 group or Microsoft 365 group. And inside the settings of this site collection, I declare that I want to teamify that site collection. So I want to create the team and not only the backing Microsoft 365 group. Moreover, because I'm teamifying the site collection, I want also to hide the teamify message. So I don't want to see in the lower left corner of my website the message, why not creating a team for the site? Because I'm already creating a team for that site. Interesting part of this XML section is the provisioning ID. With this attribute, I can give a unique ID to my set collection within the provisioning template. And this will become really helpful in a matter of few seconds from now. When I create this set collection, I want to apply a provisioning template to that set collection with a reference to a specific template called the projects template, which is defined right here in the template section. Here it is, provisioning template with ID project template. This is a very simple template just for the sake of showing you something. So I define 4 custom site level fields. I define a custom content type which will use those fields, and I define a custom library which will be called company name -projects, and in there I'm just using the content type that I created before. So just a document library with a custom content type, nothing more than that. But we also have a team section. So let me close this one and let's open the team section. Here we want to provision some settings on a team, which is actually an already existing team, the one that we created when we teamified the previous set collection. And just to let you know, the provisioning engine will first of all provision the set collection, and secondly, go through all of the team settings. So you can create the sequences first, because that will happen in the provisioning engine, and then you can apply the template. Sorry, you can apply the team related section. Here I say this team targets a group which is already existing, and the group is the one with the sequence site group ID of team site 01, which was the site ID that we defined in the sequence. So this information, provisioning ID. So I'm basically saying that this team template will apply to the team that we created when we teamified the previous set collection. So whatever I will define in this team provisioning definition will be applied to that team. And again, here I'm creating a few tabs in the general channel, including, just for the sake of completeness, a SharePoint document library team tab, which will target my custom document library that I just created. And here again, I can use the sequence site URL, ID of my site, so that I can say, give me the projects library in the site URL that we just provisioned. So quite powerful, I think. So let me open the last PowerShell script. Let me connect to my target environment. This one will be executed with a delegated access token, because I'm also creating messages and other stuff which requires a delegated access token. And now I will apply this tenant level template. Again, if I go back here, we'll see our new team popping up. It will take longer than before, because first of all, we need to create the set collection. We need to teamify that one. So it will take a few more seconds compared with the previous demos. But at the very end, we will have a new team here. We will have a set collection with a custom library defined in the, and here it is, defined in its information architecture. And we will have the team fully connected to the set collection that we provisioned. So if I already go here, I can see that maybe the provisioning is still running. Yes, actually the provisioning is still running for the site collection, so better to wait. The site collection is still under provisioning. I'm creating the list instances, the content types, and all the other stuff. And this will be, by the way, the name of the set collection, so I can try to be smart and open the set collection as soon as it will be ready, so that we can save some time. Okay, now we are provisioning the teams part of the story. So in the meantime, I can go here and say PSIS, that site, and I can go to this site. And we can see that here we have the PnP projects document library, in which we have our custom project document and our custom stuff. If I go back, in a matter of few seconds, the provisioning of the team will be completed. Oops, of course, there is the demo effect. Wonderful. Okay, let's see what happened. But we have the general channel, and we have the PnP projects tabs where we are targeting the document library. We have the private channel, and it failed to create the web tab targeting Bing. I will dig into it. Maybe it's a bug. And if that will be the case, we will fix it. But aside from the small issue we had right now, I think it is quite powerful that you can provision a site collection together with a team. They will be connected, and you can do you can define the information architecture of the site collection as well as the structure of the team within a unique provisioning template. I think that's all for me. It was a 20-minute demo almost, so I try to do my best to squeeze it in the time ahead. If there are any questions, feel free to raise your hand. Or
yeah, I think thank you, Paolo. Awesome demo. I think it's really, really great, and really shows the power of the tenant templates as well. That it's not just about SharePoint; it's about the whole platform as such, and that's what it targeted for us. Now, there's a few questions on the chat window. You probably want to follow up on those on the chat. I think it's easier that way. And let's jump on Victor's screen so that he will have a time to do this properly.
I'm ready. Let's share my screen. So thanks, Paolo. I think that's really cool stuff to see.
Yeah, sorry, Victor. I'm just going to say that it's actually slightly weird that Paolo is showing the Teams from a SharePoint perspective. You're showing actually Teams solution in SharePoint. So we're kind of flipping now everything upside down. But I think that's the whole point of this demo, so people understand what's possible. So
exactly. So and that's the whole point. So we want to be. It's one Microsoft 365, right? And we want to be able to reuse whatever we do, whether we do sort of PowerShell scripts or using the schema or building applications. And there's a lot of reasons of building applications in different ways. And it all has its both advantages, but also disadvantages. And what we're going to look at today is sort of how to bring that provider-hosted app experience back to SharePoint Online. That is, there are scenarios when you want to build an application for SharePoint Online that requires, for instance, server-side hosting. You need to do background processing. You might be uploading documents or integrating to other systems, and which you can't do sort of in JavaScript only. So in those cases, you need to have server-side rendering. For instance, there might be scenarios where you want to hide your IP. You might have business processes, logic, etc., that you don't want to share in JavaScript because it's fairly easy obfuscated. So SharePoint Framework isn't enough for that. Of course, you can sort of use SharePoint Framework and build APIs and those kind of things. But yeah, sometimes server-side rendering makes sense. And also, if you're already invested in building a web application or something, you can bundle that into a Microsoft Teams tab fairly easy. But also, thanks to the integration between Teams tabs and SharePoint Online, you can also take Teams tab and make that as a SharePoint full page application or as a SharePoint web part. It has some disadvantages, of course, since SharePoint Framework is highly responsive, it's all client-side, etc., etc. But there's, as I said, a lot of advantages as well, specifically if you want to do super high-performance stuff with server-side rendering and caching and those kind of things, and used in sort of low-bandwidth situations, etc. But let's take a look at how we can sort of create an application using Yo Teams or whatever other generator you prefer to generate your applications with. The Yo Teams has everything built into it, so it's sort of the next finish to have everything up and running. And we create the Teams tab out of that, and then I'll show you how to deploy that Teams tab into SharePoint Online and how to use a full page application as a web part. But also, if we have time, we take a look at some behind the scenes, what is actually happening and how does this application works and what's the drawbacks, etc. The first kind of thing you want to do is, of course, go to aka.ms/yoteams, download the Teams generator. Then you fire up command prompt and essentially type Yo Teams to follow the wizard and get up and running. And it will ask you a couple of questions. I, of course, have prepared a demo that we'll take a look at, but I'll walk you through this as well. So just to give you solution name, a folder, company name, and those kind of things. And here's one of the things that I highlighted. So the new thing with 2.14 is that we support the 1.6 schema if you want to use that. For this demo, however, it doesn't really matter what version you're using. It has to be higher than 1.4, I think, though. Then you essentially choose to build a tab. And also one of the advantages, if you're building a bot, for instance, and you're already building tabs, etc., and as Vesa said, the whole idea is we want to reuse stuff. And so if you're already building for Teams, then it's fairly easy to extend it to actually have your application being supported in SharePoint Online as well. But for now, we just choose a tab. We have to choose somewhere to host it. I skip the indicator here, we skip the testing framework, and we skip App Insights. I need to give it the tab a name. That will also be the web name of the web part. Choose a configurable one, and these are the team settings, and we skip single sign-on. But now we come to the more interesting question here. So, do you want this tab to be available in SharePoint Online? And if I choose yes here, then I also can choose between do you want to have it as a full page application and or as a web part? And we choose both here, and just for the demo, and your application will be created. I'll cancel out here so we don't have to see all the npm packages being installed, but let instead go to my demo application that I already created. So this is, I followed the same procedure as I just did a couple of hours ago, but I also added some server-side APIs to this. So very simple way for us to do some background processing to showcase why you would like to use a provided hosted app instead of just JavaScript. But the key thing here is when we generated that manifest and the generator asked us if we want to support SharePoint Online. In the manifest file, the manifest is what defines your Teams application. You will have the configurable tab. You will have everything just as normal, but there are two new attributes in here. So the SharePoint preview image and supported SharePoint hosts. And that's essentially what we had to fill in. So we can choose here and manually go in and modify existing manifest, etc. as well if you want to add SharePoint support. But this is the only thing we need to do. We need to show the preview image, and as you can see, it has a specific size, 1024 by 768. And then you can choose between the SharePoint full page or SharePoint web part. There's nothing more you have to do in your Teams application essentially to get up and running. So let me demo the application in Teams, and then we'll see how we can deploy it into SharePoint Online. So if I go over to my web browser, where are you? Down here. If I go over here and upload my application to Microsoft Teams first, so I sideload it into this team I have here. So let's upload a custom app, and then we need to find it's under code, demos, PnP. That's the one, and package. So let's upload my application in here, and it's just a tab. Approve that one. So now I'm just sideloading it into Microsoft Teams, into this specific channel. Can add the tab up here, and it's called, where do we have it? Teams plus SharePoint Online. That's the name of my tab in this case. Let's add this tab, and this configuration, I'm not using it, so we just type hello world here. But remember what's happening now when I do this in Teams. So we type hello world, we save. We'll actually see this printed out here once it's loaded. So it's printing out my configuration setting here. That's just for testing. But remember that when we take a look at the same kind of thing in SharePoint Online as well. What I've done here is that we have an option to upload an image. So I can go into pictures and upload a picture of Parker. Click on upload, that will upload and do some background processing. And then finally, in a few seconds, we will see an image here. And I did some posterizing on the actual image. So I changed it to 3 colors, essentially. Stuff you could do server side. I'm pretty sure Stefan Bauer could do this in JavaScript as well, or CSS only. But that's the whole kind of point. You want to do some heavy lifting, which you can't do with JavaScript normally. So that's why we do it server side. So I want this web part or tab to be available in SharePoint Online. And all I need to do is be a SharePoint admin. I need to go to the app catalog of my tenant and click on apps for SharePoint. And essentially the only thing I need to do here, this is where I deploy all my SharePoint framework stuff and everything. I click on upload, and I'll choose the same package zip file that we uploaded to Teams a couple of minutes ago. Demos, PnP, and let's get the package again. So the same zip file, which contains the manifest and the 2 images. And in this case, do you trust Teams plus SPO? The same kind of experience you get when you upload SharePoint Framework. We make it available to the whole organization. Click deploy. And that's all you need to do. So you just drag and drop the same kind of zip file that you uploaded or sideloaded into Microsoft Teams. And then we can go to any SharePoint site, Go to the same one here. We create a new page, and let's start with a blank page. Create page, and let's call it demo. And we can add. We don't add any text. We add some web part in here, and search for Teams. And now we should see here Teams plus SPO. So this is the one, and this is the first kind of thing. If you follow the guidelines for SharePoint for Microsoft Teams and how to design those icons, you should have that outline icon, which should be white on transparent. And unfortunately, the same icon doesn't really work that well in SharePoint Online, but you have to live with that, or you break the rules for deploying your Teams to your application to Teams, or you create actually a separate dedicated package just for SharePoint Online, which has the right or black on transparent, for instance, for the icon. If we add that one, we get the same kind of configuration dialog here, and we type hello, not caps, hello world. So we have the exact same experience as with in Teams. We click on save, and we will have our tab here running on the page. So I can click publish. So the first thing you should notice is instead of getting hello world here, I actually getting the URL of my tab, which is a little bit weird. That's a reported bug, and hopefully we get that fixed. But the idea is that you can actually into that URL eventually post your settings, etc., and then parse that out if you want it stuff to work. We can do the second kind of thing here. We can upload a file. Let's get a picture, and let's get this one instead. Upload it. So uploading it in the background, we have some server-side processing now, and then we get our image. One thing you notice here is this is the tab. A tab in Teams is an iframe, and a tab in SharePoint Online is an iframe as well. So you will actually get scroll bar here. So that's one of the things you need to think about when designing your applications. If you do a web part like we done here, you will get a scroll bar. So that's something you need to take into your design. If we do the other thing, where we go in here, we create a new page, and we create a full page application. And as you can see, we have templates up here, and we also have apps. Since I deployed it as a full page application, we have the apps option, and I can choose here, Teams plus SPO. If I choose that one, we get the preview image. The one I mentioned should be 1024 by 768. Should probably be something better than you have here, something that actually describes or is a screenshot of your application. It's not, if you do a full page application with SharePoint Framework, you get some nice preview like you do in here, live preview, but you don't get that with the Teams tabs, unfortunately. We click on create page, and when we do that, we get the same experience just as previously. Hopefully, yes, loading, and we get the option to say hello world, and we click on save. Then we need to name our page, demo 1, 2, 3, and save. There we are. Now we have a full page application with our Teams tab. We can upload an image again and show you how the scroll bar works when we do it in the full page experience instead. And it will take a few seconds, and you can see here now we get, this is much more useful to scenario to actually work with full page application and Teams tabs. So this is how I should typically deploy a Teams tab, unless it's very small, has very small limited functionality, or you do something about that scroll bar. So that's how we work with reusing Teams tabs as SharePoint Online web parts and full page applications. That is, we are having provider hosted applications back. The caveat of this, of course, is that sort of when you have, if you're building with SharePoint Framework, you're very comfortable of using the HTTP clients and graph clients and those kind of things. You cannot do that in here. This is, as I mentioned, an iframe. So it will be hosted in your iframe and still on your domain. So you need to use your own methods of talking to the graph or your APIs or other single sign-on options in here if you want to talk to secure APIs. Of course, you can use the single sign-on tab experience as well. But the thing I wanted to highlight is that it's exactly the same code. If you want to debug it, you can do it here. And as you can see, this is hosted here on my domain, and it's an iframe. If I highlight it like this, you will see the iframe here. There it is. So that's everything you're running is inside an iframe. So you cannot talk back and forth normally between. There's no thing such a connected web parser or anything like here. But it's a good way of getting your stuff up and running in SharePoint Online. I think that's it for the demos, and I haven't been able to check the chat if there's any questions in there. So.
Thank you, Victor. So there was a few questions, not a massive amount. So Xiao is pointing out it's like an app part in add-ins, and that is correct. So it is basically a modern add-in part, so to say, and like a provider-hosted add-in experience. It works exactly the same way. So.
Yeah, that is right.
Good. I'm going to share my screen. If there's any other questions for Victor, use the chat window. We are running out of time anyway. So thank you, Victor, and thank you also, Paula, for great demos. Really, really cool stuff. And also, hopefully, that kind of opens up some new opportunities and new ideas for the audience as well, because it seems to be that people are not that much aware that you can actually do this with Microsoft Teams tabs as well. So you can actually surface your existing web application also in Teams using the same model. And again, just recapping what Victor said, so we do have two different options. You can implement your own web application, which is hosted in Azure, and then surface that as a Teams tab or a personal application or as an iframe or a bit part in SharePoint, or you can implement the stuff using SharePoint framework. So what would be the design factors? Well, if you have an existing site, an existing experience already running in a website in Azure, obviously you want to surface that. Now, if you would need to implement something small and convenient, maybe for enterprise consumption usage, maybe it's easier to actually implement that and faster to implement that with SharePoint Framework, because we take care of the hosting for you. You don't have to spin up an Azure website. You don't have to worry about permissions and operations and CDN and all of that stuff, because all of that is automatically done for you. So that's kind of the design decision factors here. Good, but I think that's it for now. I'm going to actually just quickly close up. We've been having a nice Q&A discussion on the chat window, super valuable stuff, and thank you everybody for helping on the questions on the chat window. The recording of this one will be in the Microsoft 365 SharePoint community channel, YouTube channel, within 24 hours, again as M365 PnP videos, and definitely follow the Microsoft 365 Dev and M365 PnP in Twitter to stay up to date on what's happening. The next M365 General Dev is on May 28th. Next SharePoint Framework Community Call is on May 21st, so a week from now if you're interested in SharePoint Framework stuff. And my next monthly community call for SharePoint area is in June 9th with a search customization topic, by the way. That's going to be interesting as well. But for now, we are closing up. So quick recap, again, as M365 Dev Calls is the URL to get access on all of this stuff. And that's it for now. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for your quick discussions. Thank you for being active on the community. Please, let's keep on doing that in the future as well. And remember to stay positive and provide positive feedback as well. So thank you, Paula, and thank you, Victor, and we'll be definitely in touch. Bye-bye.